I am Liz Arrington. I'm the co-founder and managing director of the GCV Institute, and I'm also the architect of the GCV Keystone CVC benchmarking platform. I will be moderating the panel, and I'm really excited to have the opportunity to dig into two corporate startup collaboration approaches, what we call corporate venture business development, portfolio development, or commonly known as platform teams, and venture clienting programs. So in today's competitive venture environment, we see that money is really fungible, and that therefore this means that the bar has been raised for all corporate venturing programs. High potential startups have very clear expectations of both the strategic partnering capabilities as well as the VC investment professionalism of corporations. And at our recent GCV symposium in London in June, we had a really interesting conversation about different models for corporate engagement with startups. And we frequently get questions about what is the same and what is different between a CVC program business development or platform team and a standalone venture client program. And why do you need both? And of course, we get many inquiries from North American corporates who want to understand what exactly is venture clienting. Today, we pulled together a stellar panel who are going to help us to compare and contrast CVC platform or business development programs with venture client programs, as well as look at how the two programs might fit together. And we've also included a representative of a CVC program, which uses their platform team to work both with portfolio companies as well as other startups. And I will ask them to introduce themselves in a couple of minutes after I set the stage with a little bit of market context and data. So let's start by establishing some common language and market context that we typically use in our institute courses. First of all, corporate innovation. Corporate innovation encompasses a range of functions and capabilities, blending both outside in and inside out initiatives to drive competitive advantage and growth via new customers, new businesses, new markets. Corporate venturing is an umbrella term which includes a range of different models, structures, teams, operations, and performance goals. Frequently, it puts concepts around open innovation to work. Often, it will start with one model and then expand to others at times. Some groups, like our friends at Siemens Energy Ventures that we'll hear from today, manage all of their corporate venturing activities under one program. Others, like BMW, manage them independently, although, of course, ideally in alignment to avoid market confusion and duplication of effort. If we look at the individual components of corporate venturing programs, corporate venture capital involves direct external minority investments in startups with both financial and strategic objectives. And it may be done through the balance sheet, it may be done through an independent entity, or via limited partnerships with external venture capitalists. Corporate venture business development is a parallel professional function that's part of the corporate venture capital team. It's essentially a platform to support the minority investment activities. And the idea of this group is that their role is to engage both internal and external ecosystems and figure out how to make best use of corporate resources. Venture clienting is a structured program which focuses on enabling startup commercial partnerships with the corporate serving as an early proof of concept or pilot customer, but unlike corporate venture capital, it does not involve making an equity investment. Another element within the corporate venturing toolkit is venture building, which is essentially internal incubation or co-creation of new ventures with partners. And often it's a structured way to kickstart internal concepts or build on existing technologies or IP. It's set up in a structured way to protect the initiatives from business process requirements, and the goals may be to create new businesses, to spin into an existing business, to spin out. Accelerators versus venture clienting are a cohort-based, short-term, fixed duration program, typically focused on pre-seed and seed startups, and generally include mentoring and other corporate resources. And then the final element within a corporate venturing program may be a venturing and innovation center of excellence capability, sort of where the group acts as a service provider driving a cultural innovation, common operational framework, maybe supporting other cross-company innovation functions, may offer training, common language, those sorts of things. So these are all of the different elements that make up, the corporate venturing toolkit. So corporate venturing is hard. Yeah, corporate venturing programs operate in a complex set of interdependent ecosystems involving both external partners and multiple internal stakeholders. As it's become more of a mainstream weapon in the innovation arsenal, we see corporate venturing programs having to manage hundreds of parent touch points at multiple levels with constant role rotations. And externally, savvy corporates are no longer seen as poor stepchildren to VCs, but as different and potentially more impactful partners, particularly in regulated and highly complex sectors such as healthcare, financial services, energy, transportation. So it's a hard job. But we've seen over the past few years that a distinguishing characteristic of high-performing programs is an end-to-end investing approach that is fundamental to both portfolio financial performance and to the delivery of the ultimate strategic impact that's needed to ensure that the program sustains. And over the past 5 years, more like 7 years, we've seen high-performing programs increasingly blend a VC investment capability with a corporate venture business development capability to drive internal and external ecosystem environment. And we've seen that this is highly valued by startups and is really a source of differentiation. But interestingly, during the same period, we've seen corporations look to professionalize larger scale commercial partnering programs, with the BMW Startup Garage established in 2015, popularizing the term venture client. So how prevalent are these programs? Our Keystone CVC benchmarking research shows that 40% of CVCs now have an integrated professional business development or platform team that formalizes approaches to internal and external ecosystem partnering and that operates in parallel with the investment teams. And we've seen this number rise significantly over the past few years. And the types of things that these programs do, 86% say that they offer access to parent partnerships, suppliers, consumer networks, close to 80% access to parent R&D and technical expertise. And interestingly, 52% offer project management capability, resources, and even funding for proof of concepts or trials. At the same time, our benchmarking research shows that 40% of corporations that have direct investment programs also have separate venture client programs that are purpose-built to facilitate parent commercial collaboration with startups without involving millions in equity investment. So let's dive in with our panel to explore both the commonalities and the differences between the two approaches, as well as the benefits and the limitations of each. So I'm going to ask the panel to start by introducing themselves and providing a little bit of context about your program, when it was established, what it's chartered to do, how it's set up to engage with startups, and what the scale of the program is, and then of course your personal role. So I am going to let's start with Inga.
Yeah, first of all, thank you, Liz, for the introduction, and of course for these numbers. This is always very impressive to see this on one slide, because then you see what is so much more beside the investment at itself. So, but back to your question, just a short introduction from BMW Ventures. We are the corporate venture capital fund from BMW Group, and yeah, we are investing along the mobility industry, you can say it like that. So which summarize in car development technologies which comes into production or supply chain as well, also along digital sales and services like marketplaces, after sales, IT, and sustainability. With the sustainability, we try to support the CO2 targets of the BMW Group at itself. And how you can see it on my background, we are headquartered in San Francisco and also have the second office in Munich. So we bridge between, on the one hand side, on the ecosystems from a venture capital perspective, and this makes us so special from this perspective. We are from a structure like a venture capital, but the corporate makes us also very special. So we are financial driven and find and try after the investment to find a strategic angle, and this is why my role came up for business development reasons, how we can support our portfolio companies along the way and maybe to become a supplier of the BMW Group at the end of the day. At the moment, we did more than 80 investments in total. We have 59 active portfolio companies, and we are investing in North America, Europe, including UK and Switzerland, back to Israel. And I think this is also a good combination to see the bridge between the different continents, not only what we are discussing today between venture clienting and business development, also the difference between the continents and how the companies comes up in this area.
Right. And you do you are completely separate from the BMW Startup Garage, the venture clienting arm of BMW.
That's correct. So we are a 100% daughter identity, and we are really independent in our investment decisions. So we don't need an approval from the board management. So we can decide more on our side. And the BMW Startup Garage, which is back on the R&D center and combined with the R&D development part. So they are really one department in the corporate. We are really working very closely together, and this makes absolute sense. And I think we will elaborate this later how we
Absolutely. Okay, well, let's go on to our venture client representative. Eva, do you want to introduce yourself in the program?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Liz. I'm Eva. I'm from the Siemens Energy Ventures team, and we have them all, like you mentioned. We do venture capital, we do venture building, and we do venture clienting, which is not as known yet, but I'm here to also promote that. And as we come from the energy industry, our focus is, of course, anything in the space of climate tech, but also enabling technologies that allow us as a manufacturer in the energy sector to become more sustainable and so on. And to focus on venture clienting, what we did when we spun off of Siemens AG in 2020, Siemens Energy was established as a separate company, and also the CVC arm was founded. And soon after this inception, also the venture clienting team came into play, and we started roughly 2020, 2021, and formalized the team. And also I'm currently operating this formal team of a venture client unit under the Siemens Energy Ventures umbrella. And the scale of this program is quite big in terms of when we were established. So we are currently proud to say that we've done over 78 projects with startups. Wow. And we have roughly a 40% adoption rate of these projects to long-term work with Siemens Energy. And of course, the annual business impact projection for the financial impact is also roughly 80 million per year. And we're in the scale-up phase. So my target is to really bring this to the next level, make the whole company familiar with successful startup partnering through venture clienting. And the team is roughly 5-ish people centrally. We do get external support as well for market intelligence, but in general, we work with decentral team members to support venture clienting at Siemens Energy to really find the use cases in the organization. And last but not least, I myself, I'm with Siemens and Siemens Energy for quite some time, 8 years roughly. I've been in the ventures teams in 3 years. And before that, I had a function in corporate governance. So yeah, that's about it. And looking forward to the dialogue today.
Great. Thank you, Eva. Amy, tell us about JetBlue Ventures, which is very different than these two.
Yes, definitely. Thanks for having me today, Liz. Great to see you. Yeah, so I'm the president of JetBlue Ventures. We are a wholly owned subsidiary of JetBlue Airways. So if for those of you who are not maybe in the United States, we're an airline based in New York City. We were created in 2016 as a separate subsidiary, which is mandated to do a couple different things, which we're going to talk about today. But we invest, we have a platform, a very strong platform, and we also do not what we call venture client work, but we do venture client work, all within the same function and under the same umbrella. We are kind of the innovation arm of JetBlue. So that's how we can tackle this part of our business. We've invested in 55 startups over the last 8 years. Let's see, we invest around anything travel related. So travel tech, it includes sustainability, climate tech, but anything that you can think of as a traveler yourself, we would invest in. Tends to be mostly software related, but definitely a far reaching scope in terms of anything that touches travel, mobility, sustainability within the industry, things like that. Let's see, I have a team of 12. We are made up of both investment professionals and basically business development professionals or platform professionals. We are based in San Francisco, even though JetBlue is headquartered in New York. We do have a couple of our crew members who actually sit with the JetBlue team in New York, so that helps us kind of facilitate conversation between. I have personally been in the airline industry for a long time, 24 plus years. Became the president of JetBlue Ventures in 2021, joined the team as the person in charge of the platform in 2018. So have been with the team for 6 years, doing exactly the work we're talking about today. I think that's it for now. I know we'll talk about all of these things quite a bit over the course of today.
Great. So let's dig into what is the same and what is different between a CVC program platform team and a venture client program. So maybe let's start with what kind of startups do you actually focus on with each? Are they portfolio companies, non-portfolio companies? What's the innovation horizon? How mature are the startups? How do you decide what are going to be the right partners for you? So why don't we start with you, Eva, from the venture client perspective? What kinds of startups do you look for?
Sure. In general, venture clienting is here to deliver short to midterm impact for our company, and by impact we mean new revenue or cost savings. So we, per design, look for companies that are rather enabling our business to run smoother. So we look at challenges or growth potential use cases at our company, and then we look outside the company. And yeah, we've been around for a couple of years, and we can say that the main areas where we find our use cases operating in, and therefore we also look for startups in these areas, are in the space of automation and data. So this is definitely a field where we partner. And then there's also a lot of technologies also around asset tracking, automation, data in the space of manufacturing, and also cybersecurity to keep our sites and our assets safe. And a fun topic that I enjoy a lot is also that we grow a lot as a company. So we hire thousands of people. So the upskilling of people is a huge topic that we focus on as well, to train with AR, VR technologies our employees across the globe and bring them up to speed as soon as possible. That's also a key area to focus on, but also any R&D program can be supported by us. So this is really very broad, but short to midterm focused. I mean, we do scout for these technologies, and we evaluate that we only go with best startups, and then my team brings them into a pilot project, and we run different projects, sometimes on the same cases, but usually they're always slightly different. I think that's maybe enough to say at this point in time, Liz, or do you have any follow-up?
So you're saying generally kind of Horizon 1, Horizon 2 startups generally for internal adoption, and that you place a high priority on engaging and innovation culture for engaging the business as well. Inga, on the BMW side, where you're looking mainly at portfolio companies, talk a little bit about what sorts of startups you typically engage with and kind of what your role is.
Sure, happy to. Yeah, I mean, and this also touched the difference between the BMW Startup Garage and BMW Ventures at itself. So maybe first of all, how BMW Startup Garage is collaborating with startups, just to clarify that one is, so startups, and this is really broad mentioned, apply at the BMW Startup Garage to get a pilot project running. So the BMW Startup Garage provides startups with the project management, also with the budget for this 3 to 4 months running pilot project. And so what they do is to collect out of the company of the BMW corporate side to find the right person or the need out of the department and fulfill this with the right startup and run the pilot project. So you can also say it's like a bypass or a fast track to become maybe a supplier for the BMW group. And this works very smoothly, and hopefully when the pilot project succeeds, that this will become someday a supplier at the end. And we are from the BMW Ventures side with the business development. We, of course, support our portfolio companies, and this is why we collaborate so very close with the BMW Startup Garage. We try to bring our portfolio companies also that they can apply for a pilot project who's running through the Startup Garage as well. But also we provide beside this, not only with our, of course, in financial aspects with the investments, we stay longer with our portfolio companies. And I would say this is one of the main differentiators between the ventured clienting model and how we support our companies. So because what I've learned, I joined BMW Ventures 3 years ago and built up from scratch. And this is what I learned in these 3 years. It's always a challenge to find the right persons in the corporate with the right needs and the right timing. And if you know around the model or the process along the mobility industry, this can be very complex, especially for technologies which maybe come into a car one day. And to really find the right needs and fulfill the strategic alignment with the BMW group. So this is why we stay longer with our portfolio companies and knock on many doors in the company to find the right partner and fulfill this.
Right, great. So Amy, you kind of do both, and I know we use you as an example in our courses of having a balanced portfolio strategy. So maybe you can talk a little bit about how you source startups across these different innovation horizons and roles.
Yeah, and we definitely have some goals around the different horizons and what we're looking for. And it's very different between what we invest in and what we don't invest in. But both of those things are under, our mandate. So my team will invest in startups, throughout, according to all 3 horizons. We have a higher emphasis on maybe kind of horizon 2 than we do on any of the others, although we have goals around each one. And we will bring those startups, through our platform team, we bring those startups to folks we know in the industry, to JetBlue Travel Products, all of the things that we can do to help them grow with clients and with, with customers. And so my team is responsible for making sure that they, have that opportunity. And it's a little bit across the board in terms of what we might offer up to the people, either JetBlue or somebody else in the industry in terms of horizon. We invest in startups that are 7 to 10 years out, but some of those actually have a relationship with JetBlue. Think of a SAF company, a sustainable aviation fuel company that already has an offtake agreement with JetBlue. So it really is across all of the horizons that we would bring to JetBlue in terms of opportunity. It really depends on what JetBlue is looking for in terms of strategy or the business unit needs. So this team also does innovation work, and we have a very specific program called Innovation Sprint, and we work with individual business units and actually dive into maybe their individual 3 to 3 year strategy or pain points they're trying to solve, and we source a ton of startups around that particular topic, whatever it might be, and we will help those startups come into JetBlue and actually work with JetBlue. We'll help them develop a proof of concept. We will project manage it. You know, all of those things my team is responsible for, but we may never invest in those startups. I mean, we've done innovation sprints around like the legal team, and legal startups are clearly not in our mandate as a travel tech company. So that's how we kind of tackle both together. And again, it's across the board. Like some of the startups that JetBlue would like to see and use, either that we invest in or we don't, are really early stage, and some are much further along. And so, you know, whatever is kind of within the scope of what JetBlue is looking for at that time is what we are focused on. You know, like for example, AI, of course, you know, is the buzz of the year. But you know, JetBlue needs to be educated around within each individual business unit, what could AI do for them? And so that's the type of work we would do as the innovation team for JetBlue. Now, some of those we'll invest in, some of those we won't, but our job is still to make sure we tackle both and understand both.
So your innovation sprints are kind of like mini venture client programs in some way.
They really kind of are, right? And sometimes it works out and we have a great investment out of that. And a lot of times it's just a great business partner that JetBlue has found.
Right. Well, we've had a couple of questions already coming in looking at startup sourcing and looking at how you go about identifying the best startups to feed into your relative programs, and are there any particular indicators of ones that are more likely to be successful with the pilots, so, or with the engagements generally? So Eva, you want to tackle that one? How do you source the startups, and how do you know when you're likely to have a good one?
Yeah, in general, there are many entry points to the scouting process. So sometimes we already know a leading startup and we say, hey, that we're looking for a company in that space. And sometimes we don't know anything about this market, and then we start from scratch. But over the time, we have definitely grown our database in terms of the startups that are relevant to our use cases. So we've looked at thousands of startups in my team so far. And what is really success criteria for startups that to work with us is, of course, a certain stage, a certain level of there is a product, there is already maybe 1 or 2 customers that have tested this. If not, it will take longer to make this successful and even scale up through our facilities or with customers. Then it's definitely a no-go. So the more mature a startup is, the better we can take this off after a pilot. It also comes down to the level of the use case. So the startup can be perfect if we don't have the right scope defined internally to test this. So I think it's both. We need the perfect startup that fits to the problem, and then we can really make the match and do the pilot. I can say that there's multiple other factors what we evaluate. Like we have a long form that we fill out for each mini due diligence, right? But I would say funding, stage, and problem solution fit, and then we take it from there.
And do you start with the business need or facilitate that discussion and then go out and source startups, or do you have themes that you use to generally source startups in a particular space?
Yeah, we generally do bigger market analysis studies to keep us strategically aligned where our trends and where's the money going. But for each use case, we have a very dedicated, the person that scouts needs to hear what the person in the business actually needs. So it's really important for us to understand the depth of the problem and also if it's impactful enough. We also say we're not going after every single use case that we find, like Amy mentioned, like a legal topic. If this doesn't bring us any cost savings or new revenues or makes us more sustainable, then we cannot focus on it.
And does the CVC team help feed you startups as well?
Yes, sometimes. So we share deal flow basically between the teams. And since we do focus very short term, there is not a lot of overlap, but sometimes we just exchange, not sometimes, but regularly. However, it happens rarely that we actually do pilot a startup that comes from the other.
Okay. So Inga, on your side, you pretty much have your portfolio of startups that you are working with. So you wouldn't be sourcing partners from a BD perspective, but are you involved in working with the investment team to define the investment themes and the parent problem sets and the landscapes?
Yeah, absolute. But maybe first of all, I just want to add something what Eva just already mentioned, because this is what one point is very crucial also for us, because the funnel is very different for the BMW Startup Garage and for us. So this is why we share and collaborate very closely in the early beginning. So we are focused on companies from an investment perspective for Series A and B, and along this, what I've already focused the focus points. And this is where we see there are so many companies come in and apply for BMW Startup Garage. So this is a really valuable funnel as well. And this is why we exchange this separately as well. And yeah, but back to your question, Liz. Yeah, for us, it's also a very, very yeah, good combination, because this is what we say. We have tons and thousands of employees in the background of the BMW Group. So this is what we also do during our due diligence to find the right partner in the corporate and see what is their opinion. Is this might be a good solution also to tackle? Is how about the competitor landscape, and or which company might be the right partner later on. So this is one of our pieces for the due diligence process as well, not only for the business development later on. And because I joined the BMW Group 10 years before I joined BMW iVentures, and I think this is very crucial in this kind of role to understand not only the processes, and this depends, and I would separate this in two main factors. So the one thing is, do you have a technology or startup which fits and comes into a car, like a product, like a sensor which comes into a car, or material or whatever? And on the one hand side, a product technology which evaluates for the process in a production line. So this speeds us more up in this kind of fields than what does it mean to bring new technology to life into a car.
Right, right. So Amy, how do you handle sourcing and startup identification, and what's kind of the role of the investment team versus the platform team, or both?
Yeah, it's interesting. The different programs that we do, or the different problems we're trying to solve, have definitely different sourcing kind of mechanisms. And a little bit of it is a push versus a pull. So the team, we call them the operations team, that's our platform, and I guess venture clienting team, they will work with the business units and find, either through a sprint or just general work with our business units and find a need to be solved, and then they'll source. And they'll either, they'll source for both JetBlue, but also for our investment teams. So they'll bring those startups that they think are the most compelling to the investment team to say, hey, is this something we want to invest in? And the two teams work very, very closely together around what we think is the right investment to make. All of our due diligence when we do an investment is helped by the operations team. It's very, very collaborative. But the other side of it is our investment team will scan the entire horizon of travel tech and find interesting things that they think are like, the next things to come along, and find the right startup there, and then we'll push it back into JetBlue and say, hey, is this interesting to you? Will this solve a problem today? So the sourcing comes from both. We get sourcing specific to JetBlue problems, but we also get sourcing specific to just in general overall travel tech problems. And we like everybody have a huge mechanism to source startups, a bunch of partners and accelerators and all of the things that we do, and both teams access those sources for startups. They just why they're looking for them is a little different. But again, it all comes back together in the middle, and they're very, very collaborative around that. And sometimes the investment team will find a startup that we're going to invest in because we think it's the right deal. We're a little bit more financially focused than strategically focused. We'll invest in a startup that actually is not necessarily right for JetBlue, but it's something that will better the entire industry. And so we use our industry contacts to be able to find, business development opportunities for those startups. So it's a lot of a kind of back and forth between the two teams and just a lot of collaboration. So that works for us. We found great startups to invest in. We've brought a ton of startups to JetBlue. We've done more than 50 proof of concepts over the course of time, and also invested in 55. And those two are not necessarily, there's some overlapping and some not. So it's really worked well for that.
Good. Well, let's move on and look at the business engagement process itself. And starting with the venture client side, what is your role in managing the engagement with the business? Do you have PMO or project management office capabilities, or does that sit within the business unit? And do you have you established special relationships with procurement, for example, to ensure that there's streamlined contracts and vendor evaluation and those sorts of things?
Yeah, we do have resources to support the POC, but also the business needs resources. So we want them to be also responsible for the POC, but we do all the admin work centrally, but also the contracts, the NDAs, the purchasing, etc. So I think this is what we handle centrally, and that's really also our offering to them, but also ensuring that this doesn't end up nowhere. That the reason why we have venture clienting at Siemens Energy is in order to make a partnership successful and turn this into a long-term relationship, and set also clear KPIs. So my team always sets a clear timeline, but also KPIs that we need to meet in the project to then evaluate, yes, no, we want to move on, and that's why, and that's the next step. So I think the PMO is there for a reason, and we are quite successful with that. You asked me about the procurement topic. We have 3 different things. So of course, there's procurement, there's cybersecurity, things we have to comply with, and then we also have IT systems running. So we have a lot of things to check before doing this, and therefore we kind of created 3 contacts, one for procurement, one for cyber, and one for IT, to onboard any supplier through us. But we also have a central contract so we can single source for the specific projects. Yeah.
And how do you actually govern the POC or the process? Do you have a group within your team that's responsible for kind of tracking the different steps and any go, no go, or any decisions that need to be made, or is the business involved, or how does that work?
Yeah, the first decision is being made in the early stages where we define, is this use case new? Have we done something like this? So we have our database, but each project member is responsible to do that. But then we have an internal committee where we as a team meet and evaluate, is this a big enough problem to tackle, or are there any risks? Like, we've done this, it failed, stuff like this. At the moment, it doesn't feel like governing yet. I've thought about this multiple times. So I've thought about bringing up committees by business representatives, because a lot of other venture client units have this. I haven't, because it works at the moment without it, but I'm thinking about it. So ask me again in a year or so, but at the moment I don't govern too much. We govern the process and that the projects run according to our best practice. And that's our service actually to the business. And we get paid by the actual impact that we deliver for the business, right? We deliver a lot of impact and innovation. Yes.
Okay. And what about it at JetBlue? How have you done the same sort of work with procurement and cyber and IT and all the usual suspects? And how does the
yes
governance and management of your POCs and innovation sprints work?
We definitely have really great relationships with procurement, IT, and cyber. We work, very closely with all of them, with legal. And one of the most important relationships we did develop is with we call it strategic sourcing, and they'll actually come to us just like a business unit would come to us and say, hey, we're trying to find this. There's a bunch of incumbents in this space, but we really want something different. Can you tell us what you see out there? So we'll do little mini sprints or whatever for procurement in order for them to help them find the right business partner for JetBlue. But generally speaking, my team is responsible for, bringing the proof of concepts to JetBlue. We will project manage them if needed. We will pay for them if needed, but that's a little tricky. So we have some specific rules around that. But we'll also just work with the business units and work with the, the central PMO at JetBlue, strategic sourcing, IT, cyber, all of those groups, if they want to manage it themselves. But what we found really early on is that the folks at JetBlue just didn't understand how to actually do a proof of concept. And, we really preach, this needs to be short and quick, and, try to figure out if it's solving, X, Y, and Z problems with metrics against that, because that helps you build a business case for them to be a business partner long term. But if it doesn't work, then you move on, right? We don't, do a year contract with, a proof of concept. We really are trying to do it as a quick trial. And so my team has helped really kind of instill that in everybody. And, we've got sample proof of concept, contracts, and, we have to spend a lot of time with legal and IT to make them understand that this isn't like a full implementation with IT. This is just a quick test. The minimal thing that we can do to make this work is what we're looking for. So my team is responsible for that type of thing, but the business units will take over and do it themselves, and that's great. We're here to support. We do pay for them, and again, I said that was a little tricky because we are a separate subsidiary, and because we're a separate subsidiary, we can only pay for things that benefit us, meaning us, JetBlue Ventures. So if it's not a portfolio company or somebody we're investing in, then we have to have some stake with this company in order for us to pay for the proof of concept. Otherwise, we're just, it's just JetBlue transferring cost to us, and that's not really appropriate. So we do a lot of warrant deals. When it's something that we don't think we want to invest in, but we do want to do a proof of concept, we think it's important, we'll do a warrant deal so that, that equity comes back to JetBlue Ventures in exchange for paying for the proof of concept. And that's kind of how we work around that.
Yeah. Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Inga, I know your model is a little bit different in that you're not investing in as many startups that are ready to roll with partnerships with the business. So kind of how does your business engagement work, and what is your role in the process? And have you had to jump through all these hoops with procurement and cyber and legal and IT?
I think we all know this, and just how Amy just clarified this on this end, thank you for that one. So, I mean, it's always a challenge in a corporate, and I mean, just to start earlier, we are very clear from a BMW venture side. So we have our investment process, and I typically take over after we did the investment and support our portfolio companies so that we find the right partner on the corporate side at itself. And this is where I think this makes it a little bit tricky, because the corporate decides independently the procurement process. So we are just looking who is the right partner to find the right place in the corporate, and then let it go. It's more on this, you can say it like that. So find the right partner, find the right need, but we are not involved in any procurement decisions or anything else. So this shows very clear that we are separate identities, and we are not involved in the usual procurement processes. So we support and we try to help our portfolio company at its best from our perspective, because this is what it makes also very challenging. So that it depends on the knowledge from our portfolio companies. So I would say this makes it very different how much knowledge have these portfolio companies with the mobility industry at itself? So how long does it take to go through this process to become a supplier, to get all these approvals? And this can take not only weeks, this can take up to years that still this process is fulfilled. And I would say this is our challenge, to bring this knowledge on both sides and the awareness, and help our portfolio companies to go through this process. I mean, what is easier, or what it makes more easier for my end, is, of course, we did also investments in companies which were already around or a supplier of the BMW Group, because the department reached out to us and said, we are collaborating with this portfolio company. Do you want to take a look at this? And maybe potential wise, it's also interesting for an investment perspective. So we already did this as well in several cases. For me personally, it's very easy, because then we know they still did all these processes and went through that one.
Yeah.
But I personally like more the others, because it's really nice to challenge and help them through these guidance.
We have an interesting question from one of the attendees for Amy and Eva. When you are running a pilot or a proof of concept, what mechanisms do you implement in order to keep the scale of the test small but still be able to measure value, especially if you're looking at AI or IoT solutions? Do you have any special tricks for how you right size the pilots for the proof of concepts?
I'll start really quickly and then pass it to you, Eva. You probably have a lot more of structure around this than we do. But I mean, really, the one thing that we do is that we try to make sure that they follow a very specific kind of contract and scope of work. So we try to that's really the way to control it. This is the scope of work. This is exactly how the contract's going to work. And we help JetBlue create that over time, because again, at the beginning, they really didn't know how to do that, and they would just use a regular contract, which is maybe not appropriate for a proof of concept. So we actually developed a short form, with legal and IT and cyber all weighing in, with very specific kind of milestones and measurables to try to keep it under control. But it's tricky, and it can grow, beyond what we want it to. So maybe Eva, you have a better solution.
And I think that's always the thing to start off with, is our template, where we talk to the business and be like, so how's this going to look like in a pilot or a POC, whatever you want to call it. And then we write down a timeline, and we are the consultant here. So we consult our company to keep it simple, so it doesn't cost so much either. Like, if you scope for a huge project, this is going to cost you a lot of money. And then they're like, okay, let's keep it simple. So we always come in and say, oh, it's going to be really expensive, because they have to pay at the end for their own POCs. And that's the way to keep it simple. Or if they have a bigger checkbook, they can scope it bigger, but we do not want to go beyond a couple of months. So digital POCs can be very short and simple, but we don't have any, what you asked, Liz, there's not a secret sauce or what you can pull from. Not yet, but it's a really cool idea. So best case scenario, we could just pull from and build the contract from scratch, or from the software, but not yet, maybe in the future. But we do still negotiate project by project and just influence by consulting.
Well, this goes back to the discussion of all of the different elements of corporate venturing at the beginning, the innovation, venturing and innovation center of excellence capability. It sounds like a key role that all three of you actually are playing is this service provider role in being able to educate the business on how they can work with you to get value and impact out of the program. So I think that's a really, really important component that all of you seem to be thinking deeply and well about. So if we look at the programs in general, I think you kind of sit in different places, where both Amy's program and the BMW iVenture programs are financially accountable entities that are somewhat independent from the parent, and you are expected, I would assume, ultimately to be able to cover the costs of the platform with the returns from the investments. And on the venture clienting side, what are the assumptions about how that is the ultimate goal to be a P&L over a period of time, or is it in the interim a cost center where you measure commercial impact as well?
You mean, what is my end goal for the venture clienting team? To be a P&L or to be just a cost center?
Right. Or
Yeah, there are many options. So there are plenty of options. So I think ultimately the vision that I have is to democratize the knowledge that me and my team have. And that's why we built a digital platform to learn this. So we have trainings on this because we don't think it's rocket science. It's just practice. So we have like a digital boot camp to learn venture clienting. And then we have a talent program at our company to train people for 1 year to work with us. And they get nominated by their managers. They stay with us. We do 1 or 2 projects, hopefully more. Like, they don't exit if they don't want to, but they can exit after a year.
Mhm.
And that's how we want to democratize the knowledge that we hold as a team. And then through like procurement, it gets hopefully spread across the company at some point. In parallel, I do think there is a core competence that we hold, and I think you always need to govern this for the company. And yes, P&L is like, sometimes I get like, that would be my #1 goal, to say, if one person wants to hold the credit card after I leave the room, like, this was a really good service. And that's our aspiration, because we see us as delivering services to our customers, the business. So P&L isn't so far away from that, but I'm not actively driving this yet until I have a very smooth running unit that delivers 100 projects a year without any noises, I would say. So if I get to that stage, then we can talk about P&L, and we can talk about taking this to the next level, but we're taking it to that level at the moment too.
So for the two of you who are part of a CVC, why do you think it's important to invest in startups rather than just partner?
Well, I'll tell you what we always tell our board and our executive team. We have a very standard answer for this, because they ask that question a lot, and I'm sure everybody who is part of a CVC unit gets that question all the time. And really, the way we look at it is, we invest so we have a seat at the table, and we invest in early stage startups so we can help them develop a product that actually works for the industry and for us, right? And so we get a lot of benefit from working very closely with a startup that we've also invested in. They will build things for us. We will get a first mover advantage. We never, ever tell a startup that they can't work with other clients within the travel industry. We are definitely no exclusivity, none of that type of thing. But we, because we're there and we're part of the, we always take board observer seats or board seats. And so because we're part of the conversation, we can help influence how it's going to be developed, and that helps us. And so that's why we invest, so that we actually can be part of, the transformation that this company is going to bring to the industry. Right. And then also, of course, for financial returns as well. But on this side of it, it's to have a seat at the table.
Right. So what about iVentures?
Yeah, Amy just summarized it very well, and that sees our main focus at itself. But we call it like a triple win situation. So the one thing is, of course, we have a scope, and we are like the outside in perspective, because we are looking at the markets and understand, and looking more and more in the future advance, and see how the technologies can evolve, and of course to take a board seat or observer seat to have influence into the company, and also support them not only beside the investment, also with our expertise from a company perspective as well. And the third win aspect, of course, is our corporate background, that we can bring this to life, hopefully one day. So this is our third combination, and this shows our success stories in many cases. And I guess this is why also portfolio companies are very happy to have us as an investor on the side, and only have the support also from the board seat, but also now with the business development as well, to continue this work for the future.
Right. All right, I'm going to ask you each one final question that is everyone's favorite question around performance metrics. So looking in particular at the business development side versus the venture clienting side, what are the primary performance metrics for your program? I know the CVCs, you have always the financial versus strategic decision, and I would assume that you'd have something similar with Siemens with strategic versus commercial, but it would be great to hear from each of you. What do you measure? So Eva, you want to go first?
Yes. Internally, we measure a lot of KPIs to measure ourselves, but up to the management, we only measure two main KPIs, which is the volume, the pipeline, so the POCs that we do with the potential business impact for Siemens Energy.
And that was your 80 million a year?
Sorry?
And that was your 80 million a year number that you mentioned?
But that's in total. So for this fiscal year, we have 50 for one fiscal year and 50 new projects and 50 impact million. So this is the number. We also measure the adoption rate. We also measure the people that we have onboarded into our process. We also measure a whole bunch of stuff, but really the adoption is what we track internally at the moment, but that's the actual impact that we generate. And ultimately we want the business to measure this. So we don't measure it because that's not our responsibility, but we measure it for us to know, is this what we're doing good? And does the business then track it for themselves?
You just have to get the business to share those numbers with you.
Don't ask. It's a lot of fun.
So Amy, what do you measure?
Actually, we're very similar in that typically what we measure on this side of the business is engagement and number of programs and number of proof of concepts. And the reason we focus on those types of metrics instead of maybe different ones, it's really hard to like isolate and measure, you know, revenue impact or cost impact or productivity impact, either operationally or for people, because everything's so intertwined. And so we bring a startup forward. It's really great. It does a lot of really great things for the company. But could you say with 100% certainty that it's this X cost savings because of the startup? And what we find, it's really hard to do that. Sometimes it's easy and we'll jump all over those metrics, but most of the time it's really hard. So we do, the business needs to actually come up with those metrics in order to justify a contract for the long term. But for us, we don't try to actually kind of put into numbers like revenue and cost savings. What we do is how many, it's about learning. How many proof of concepts did we do? How many engagements, sprints or whatever it is, did we do? How did we engage with the organization? Which, have we covered all the business units? Does everybody have a chance to learn what is new in their part of the business? That's what we measure for the success of our operations team.
Okay. Inga, what do you measure for your team of you?
Yeah, me, myself, and I usually try to say on this end. And yes, of course, I mean, beside, of course, the whole financial traction and for the investment perspective from business development, we track, of course, which introductions we do and how we continue, or in which stages we call it, is the project running for the portfolio company, not only with the BMW Group, because I think it would not be the right number just to count if you have a commercial agreement in this stage, because not all portfolio companies are relevant for the BMW Group. So also they are for indirect contracting through suppliers and maybe come indirectly to the parts, into the games, into the cars or whatever. So we track more on the path. Do we have introductions? How is this continuing? Do we have pilot projects running? Do we have testing, and maybe come to the path to more commercial agreement and traction at itself? So it's more on the ecosystem and the project at itself.
Great. All right. Well, I want to thank the three of you for a very insightful and fascinating conversation. I certainly learned a lot. And I also appreciate all of the questions that the attendees submitted. I'm sorry we didn't get to everything. I tried to wind in as many as I could, but we really appreciate you coming. And Now I'm just going to spend a couple of quick minutes with a few kind of closing slides, but this has just been a fabulous webinar. So thank you so much, panel. We really appreciate your time and your insights. Just as a reminder, our next webinar will coming in the second Wednesday of September. We'll delve into the practice of providing media support in return for equity as an element of strategic investing, and registration for that webinar will open today. And also wanted to call your attention to a few forthcoming GCV events. We have a new event in the new Nordics in Finland and Estonia in September 16th and 17th. Then we have our Executive Leadership Forum at Inkytel's offices in Menlo Park. We have our events in Brazil and Tokyo coming up, and our GCV Connect event in Germany this year will move to Frankfurt, so we're very excited about that. And we have, of course, our flagship summit that will be back in Monterey in March. In addition, we also have a busy schedule of fall courses with convenient live online cohorts of both our foundational CVC investment programs course in September and December, and then we'll have in-person courses running adjacent to the events in Palo Alto and Tokyo. And for the first time, we will be running an in-person CVC investment programs course in Frankfurt, Germany, in conjunction with our Connect event. And if you are interested in delving more deeply into end-to-end investing and engagement platform strategies and best practices, we do have our fall cohort of our mentored Landing the Value of Corporate Venturing program, which will kick off in September. And we'd happy to provide any more information about that. And then finally, the data that we provided at the beginning of the webinar was drawn from our Keystone benchmarking platform. And we will be launching the annual survey refresh of our broad operational and performance benchmarking data in September. So we will hope that all of you will participate. Those of you, it's anonymous, and those of you who participate will receive an aggregate summary of the data. And we'd love to, the more that you provide, the deeper the data set, the richer the insights that we can provide back to you. Then finally, thank you once again for joining us. Feel free to reach out to me with any questions or comments, or for more information about either the Institute or Keystone. And for those of you who missed the full webinar, the replay should be up on the GCV site by the end of this week or early next week, along with editorial's standard fabulous write-up. So thank you once again for joining the webinar. We really appreciate your time and your interest, and we'll look forward to seeing you in September. Thanks, everyone.